I'm doing it. Something that I have been thinking about for a long time. I'm leaving the Canon EF or US digital SLR system. And this is not an easy decision to make. In fact, I've been shooting Canon for almost the entirety of my career. The very first camera that I ever purchased was the Rebel T6i. It was designed to do photography and videography back in the day. I remember running around with it and utilizing it. I ended up passing it on to a friend when I picked up a 6D. And that then became my very first full-frame camera in this 8-year career that has spanned since college, where I have been able to have the luxury of being a photographer full-time. And so, at the moment, a lot of my stuff is bought into and built into the Canon system, and I've been putting off this change for way, way too long, for at least as long as I could. You see, I have my Mark III, my 7200, I have a Sigma 85, a Sigma 35 here after my last 6D and 24 got stolen. I have zoom lenses, I have a 100mm macro lens, I have a full Profoto rig and system designed to facilitate and allow us to shoot high quality photography. I have everything set up to be a wedding photographer. And so it would make the most sense to just purchase another Canon camera. It would be the easiest thing to do because of the exclusivity when it comes to lens mounts, when it comes to the gear you're using, the flash mounts that go on top. There's such a barrier in this industry to changing your core system. And it is so frustrating to be pushed up against the wall so far and then have to make a decision. Are you going Sigma? Are you going Nikon? Are you going Sony? Are you staying with Canon? And like I said, Canon's the easy road for me. I'm not only bought into it with incredible lenses, I've had a successful career with Canon equipment, but right now, at the moment, they're just not performing for me. And the options that I've been given, I'm going to be honest, just don't do it. They just don't. And I don't know all of the specs or all of the numbers and specifics, and I'm sure some of you watching will have a better sense of this, but this is going to be my video. This is going to be my explanation for why I've made the decision to leave the Canon DSLR system. And it's going to come down to two simple things: utilization and price point. Now, the reason why I'm changing my cameras is because this Mark III here has shot, hundreds or at least a couple hundred weddings. We're sitting at, 500,000 or more photos on this camera, and it's been fully operational for about 8 years. And at the last wedding I was at, twice, this stopped communicating with first the lens, then the card, then twice with the battery. And so while it still works, still functions to take pictures, still finished out the wedding day, there were moments where I had to jump to my backup, my little 6D here, which is kind of on its final legs as well. It is a little bit older than this one. And I can't trust the core body anymore. It's the thing. If you're going into a shoot that is valuable, that is your career, that matters, that you walk away with good quality photos, if this isn't working for me anymore, if I can't trust it with everything, I can't bring it. It can work fine as a backup, backup to your backup potentially. Like, if all else fails, maybe it'll work for you. But it can't continue to be my primary, not with wedding season opening back up, not with a responsibility to the client, not when I can't have my gear go down. I'm too focused on the photos I need to take, on the project that I'm working on. So the Mark III's been a great camera. I've loved my experience with it. I find it very, very comfortable. It is heavier than I would like. It did end up developing some cubital tunnel syndrome in my fingers, and so the way I interact with it's different now than I used to, especially with the 7200 on board. But this has been a absolutely powerhouse of a camera. And I decided early on, because I was holding out to see where Canon was going to go with their lineup of DSLRs, not to upgrade to the Mark IV or anywhere farther at this point. This camera has stuck with me, and it's been absolutely fantastic. I'm very comfortable with this Mark III, and the 6D in its own right has been an amazing full-frame camera. I originally was shooting video on these and ended up transitioning to using them as primarily my secondary, my backup cameras, my grab and go, my second shooters. And while they're not quite as quick or, not quite as pretty as the Mark III here, the 6Ds have also never failed me. And when it comes to image resolution, handing them over to the client, there's very little distribution between them. So, utilization and price. First off, let's go down into my perception of what Canon has done with their DSLR and video market. I, for the past 4 years or so, have been using the Panasonic GH5 to run all of my video work. The GH5S is what you're watching here. That is the video camera that is streaming this. I have multiple GH5s in this room, providing for a top shot, a side shot. This is the one that I shoot B-roll with. And these also are my run and gun cameras. These are the ones that I take out to event photography and videography gigs. I take them to weddings. I shoot everything with my GH5 system. And here's the thing. These have been some of the best video cameras I have ever used. And yes, I've used Blackmagics and Sony A3s and Canon cameras to shoot video. I've even used full video-focused Canon cinema cameras. And these little run-and-gun GH5s, grab-and-goes, throw them across the room, just be messy with them. These have to be the thing that I would recommend the most, hands down, for any aspiring videographer. The image stabilization, the lessons you can learn with it, the compact nature of it, the Rokinon City Glass, which is some of the best micro four thirds glass for cinema videography that I can find, because this lens costs a couple $100 and gives me control over my aperture and gives me some of the prettiest footage ever. I have loved my experience with the Panasonic GH5s, and they have entirely replaced these for video. And as video has become more and more a prominent part of my career, my Canons become less and less useful. I grab them and run them out for photography shoots, but in a lot of ways they're kind of venturing into retirement. And when you venture into retirement, if you don't have a purpose, if you don't have something to do to keep you busy, a hobby or something to focus on, well, the Canons are starting to break down a little bit. So you probably know where this is going. You can probably already guess. Utilization. Canon has, from the very beginning of my career, frustrated me with their lack of innovation and adaptation and inclusion for the video market. I understand there's weird things with regulations and taxes, but at the end of the day, you could fudge those things around a little bit if you were just willing to invest a bit more into the video clientele. I have been satisfied with what these cameras can give you, but they've never been what I needed as a run-and-gun documentary videographer. They've never been what I needed as a YouTuber, as a vlogger, as someone in studio. They've never been able to work for both. And the GH5 can't work for both either, to be fair. I don't use these for photography. I don't think I ever have. It's just because it's in there with a micro four thirds sensor. It just doesn't get that same degree of bokeh, of depth of field. It doesn't get the same beauty. It doesn't use the same lenses. The autofocus isn't quite as clean or concise. And so I've had to operate with two systems. Well, no longer. Because Lumix, Panasonic, has came out with the GH5, I believe. Now, I don't know what they're going to do when they come out with the GH6 or GH whatever it is. But this is their full-frame answer to this. Equivalent cameras. Equivalent lenses. Both 7200s on the ends of these. Both amazing full-frame photography cameras. Both able to shoot some degree of video. But here's where the game starts to change. This Panasonic, the usability, the accessibility, and the video adaptations included in here are almost identical and substantially improved in some areas from this GH5, which I've been using as my primary video camera for a long time. that means that this now not only functions as a full-frame, high-quality, aggressively high-quality photography camera, this also now permanently functions as my go-to full-frame video camera, adding depth of field and bokeh. And if you're interested in seeing some experimentations or some exploration between how all of these shoot video and the resolution and the type of depth of field you can get depending on what you're using, we'll get some universal glass on all of them and look at that down the road if that's something you're fascinated with. But for me, this is such a big step. I have image stabilization out the wazoo. I have a rotating, flippable screen, which is so important, not for photography. I mean, it does help for photography, but for shooting video, that screen right there, that vlogging screen right there, is probably one of the biggest things that will keep me from buying a brand new camera. If you don't have that, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. I just don't want it. This is why I'm leaving Canon. Utilization. And then finally, price. Canon's been holding back in the video department. They've been holding back in what they're willing to give you in one small package. I've seen it from the very beginning. When I was buying the GH5 for the very first time, there was equivalent cameras on the market. The 6D here was embarrassed by how pathetic its video skills were compared to this little compact camera. The Sony's been doing the same thing, pushing the boundaries of what can be included in one little package. And for me, this is the example of where the industry's going, where professional, freelance photography is headed. And Canon's behind the curtain. They want to be able to keep their DSLR prices high enough to justify it. They don't want to include high-quality video because they have a cinema line that they're still trying to sell alongside it. They keep everything, like everyone else does, universal and exclusive so that you buy into their system, and everyone's incentivized to keep you within their own framework, and it hurts to break out of it. But my perception, I could be wrong, my perception of this so far has been Canon is not competing in the video space the way I need them to justify me to continue to spend such an intense degree of money on their product. Now, I'm open to being proven wrong. Canon wants to send me a free camera and do comparisons. I will have that conversation. I don't think that's going to happen. Instead, this is where I'm headed. Panasonic, Lumix. This is the next stage. So, thank you for watching. I thought it would be an interesting conversation to those of you in the photography and videography field. Let me know, have you ever shifted from one body to another body system, one core mount system to another? What was that experience like, and what pushed you to make that change? Because this is 3 or 4 years in the running, and I was waiting for Canon to justify me to purchase their gear again, and they never did. And in that time, this was produced, and this, along with these getting older, was enough. It was enough to convince me that it was worth the initial expense and the initial sacrifice and the initial conversation to switch the core of what I was doing. Let's hope it's the right decision. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.